Philippe, welcome to the show today.
Hi, Michael. Thank you for having me.
Well, my favorite Frenchman's on the phone finally. I've known you for a little while. Actually, we met you very early on. You actually met me at the house, and you were just getting started. And man, you've had a fantastic journey from being a full-time investor now and actually being a mentor for an organization and helping students do the same thing you've had. But I want to kind of go, so I just can't wait to get in your story because you've had some ups and downs. And, you know, I think sometimes we gloss over some of the downs. And in fact, almost everybody has downs, especially Garrett. And I'm just kidding. Everyone's got about down. But, you know, we don't sometimes don't talk about it as much. And it seems from the outside in that everything is hunky-dory all the time when it actually is not. And everybody's been through rough times, and it really shapes us into the person that we are today. So I want to make sure we don't gloss over some of the challenges you've had because I think people will find it useful as well. But let's wind the clock back a little bit, Philippe. I remember back, I don't know when it was, in 2017. I don't know when we first met. Yeah. Yep. And what was going on in your life where you were like, I want to get into real estate? And when did you first start thinking real estate? It might not have been in apartment buildings. I don't even know exactly what you were thinking, but when did you first started thinking real estate and why?
I first starting to think about real estate, I would say at the end of 2015, early 2016. And, you know, it's always, I think, and that everybody should try to work on some side gigs. You know, I think now we're more in the gig economy, and certainly real estate is a good way to add additional income for people, build the legacy as well. And initially I looked into single family, and particularly single family Turnkeys, because, you know, I had a full-time job and it was hard to work, you know, do an additional job in parallel, or at least that's what I thought. And so purchased a couple of single family houses, and, you know, very quickly, you know, I think the scaling, you know, I realized it was hard to scale. And at the same time, you know, the issue of, you know, when you have a small portfolio, any vacancy becomes a problem. So that's when I pivoted and I started to look into multifamily, and I met you.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, a lot of people think single family house investing because that's what everybody does. That's what you see on the shows, and everybody's flipping. You hear about the Burr method, you know, all fine. And turnkey seems like the good solution because it's a passive investment in single family houses. But talk a little bit about experience about turnkeys, because I want to make sure that, because there's people listening, watching this stuff that make, oh yeah, turnkey is the next step for me in more of a passive investment. Talk a little bit about your investment, your experience with turnkeys.
I think it's pretty good overall. I think, you know, once you find a good provider, because I know there are some horror stories out there, but you know, I did my due diligence. You know, I selected a couple of markets. Then, you know, in each market, I met with 2 providers, and, you know, tried to get references like directly from the provider and from other people as well, you know, like through Bigger Pockets and whatnot. And, you know, I found a good, reliable provider. And for my first acquisition, I went there, you know, took a look at the house. And basically, you know, it was a renovated house, you know, which that's the principle of the turnkey. And usually they put somebody in it as a tenant, and they sell you, you know, just have to sign the contract and start collecting the rent. You know, at least on paper, that's very appealing. Plus, it's a renovated house. But again, you know, like the downside is, you know, after a little while, and actually it happened to me last year, you know, with COVID, my 2 turnkey properties, they became vacant for 6 months. So took a hit there, but yeah, that's how it is. And that's the concern with a smaller portfolio.
So this is actually, I remember the turnkey thing quite a bit. So like when I first started in the industry, I was actually like selling some turnkey stuff like that. So I was kind of on the other side of it a little bit as well, but it was a lot of the investors we were finding were from, you know, actually from other countries as well. They were coming and they just wanted to invest in the US. I don't know how you've been over here for a while, but were you looking at that also when you were out of the country and as a potential solution?
Actually, no, because I came in the US 20 years ago, believe it or not. I think.
Oh my gosh.
my accent is very barely noticeable, I understand. No, I did not. And actually, I spent most of my professional adult life in the US. And that's when, I started to have some funds to invest when I was here, really.
So you had those two turnkeys, and so you decided, hey, I can't scale like this, and you decided to shift to multifamily. So how did you approach this? What was your plan, and how did that progress?
Well, my plan was to number one, not do this alone. So I'd take a course, and that's how I looked at several courses back then, and I found yours. And I remember initially I purchased the syndicated deal analyzer. I wanted to gauge what kind of content you had to offer, within a paying service. And very quickly, what appealed to me is that you also offer the opportunity to partner with you, in case, because obviously like syndication means raising money, and I didn't really feel I had the network the time to be able to do that. So that's what that made a big difference for me to go ahead and take your course, Michael.
Yeah, so you did take a course, which, by the way, we just relaunched. It's called the Dealmaker Blueprint Training, and part of that is what we have a Dealmaker certification, which is really cool. So it's not just an online course, but it's a 12-month experience, basically to get you ready to do your first deal on your own. So that's just everything was redone. I have slightly more gray hair in the videos than I did 5 years ago when we first did it. And so that's dealmakercertification.com. But so the one you were talking about was called The Ultimate Guide to Buying Apartment Buildings. But then you actually, so you taught yourself and you went through the course, and then you started calling on properties in Memphis, and you engaged with us when you had an 80 unit that you found in Memphis. Talk to us about that entire experience.
Yeah, that was, number one, I followed, I watched all your videos and so on, and I followed all your scripts. And to my amazement, I found a property on LoopNet, and it seemed to work well. And I remember getting kind of anxious to get in touch with you to see how if there was an opportunity to partner, because it was a good deal on paper. And we use your scripts, did the underwriting, started to speak to a property manager. I had the opportunity, for me it was out of state, but during a business trip, I was able to go to Memphis, take a look at the property by myself, meet our property manager there, and we placed an offer. And actually, the owner showed up, when I first walked the property, and so I think for them it was important to put a face on a potential buyer, and we were able to close that deal, after a few months. I think it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, it did. And you got a nice acquisition fee, and you got your first deal because it didn't take you long. And you brought us Dogwood Trace right after that. Right. And that was a substantially bigger deal.
It was 168 units, yeah. And it was interesting. It was a deal, we started to look at while we're working on this Cooper property, the first property. And we ended up being, we made an offer, we placed an offer, but we were on the second offer. And actually, I think we placed an offer while it was under contract already. It was like a backup offer, just in case. We said, it looks good, this deal, let's make this backup offer. We never know. And the same day, believe it or not, the same day we closed on the first deal, I see like somebody from Memphis calling me, and I assume it was our property manager to talk about some details, but it was the broker for Dogwood Trace was calling me and saying that the deal, the first contract was falling off, and make sure to brush up your offer letter, your LOI, letter of intent, and send it over again, because there are chances that you'll be able to get that deal under contract.
So you put a lot of sticks in the fire, because that's a really good point, is keeping that many sticks in the fire at one time, even if you don't know if things are going to pop out. That's often how you will find yourself in some interesting situations with profitable deals. So it sounds like that's what you did. You had a bunch of sticks in there, and then you maybe weren't expecting it, and something just came to fruition. Has there any been another time where maybe something like that has happened, that you've been surprised, that something came out of nowhere and you're like, man, that worked out?
Yeah, I think what the most important personal experience that I gained from working, and being in that, working with you guys, working with other people, going to other events and meet people, is that I started to build relationships. And then, after this first couple of deals, it's thanks to these relationships that I was able to, either be a co-sponsor on other deals or work with some partners. And, it gave me the ability to scale up from there. That was the idea.
So
I didn't necessarily place, a lot of offers and a lot of deals, but, I think it's the relationships that I build, with other groups that allowed me to make a lot of progress.
It's like you open the first door and you didn't know what else was on the other side, and then all these other doors opened up. And that's pretty much how a lot of this business goes, right? Like, you took a leap of faith, you kind of went into this network, and you opened one door, the law of the first deal kicked in, you got a second one, 168 unit that just popped out of nowhere, which I think is
it's a good way of saying it, Garen, is keep walking through open doors, because a lot of people self-sabotage themselves because they're afraid of success. I know it sounds weird, but for example, I know people who've not made any offers because they were afraid it might get accepted, because they're afraid of what might happen after that, which means that they might not raise the money, so they can't close. So in their mind, they're like playing these massive what if scenarios, and so they're not making offers. And the mentor's like, why aren't you making offers? And they do a bunch of other stuff. They self-sabotage themselves. Others try to resist the law of the first deal. I remember who it was, doesn't matter, but they had just done their first deal, and literally a day later, they got a second deal where their offer was accepted. And they're like, oh, I'm not going to do my second deal right now. Let me just stabilize my first, And the mentor's like, no, you keep moving through doors. And that's really the thing, is just keep moving through doors. Now, you don't want to do anything imprudent, but most times it's not doing something imprudent. It's simply your mind holding you back from something. Because there's a reason there's an open door. Like, I know, call it what you want. To me, if a bunch of doors are shutting in my face, and I'm an entrepreneur, I'll try to figure out how to get around it or knock it down. But at one point, you got to stand back, going, okay, I am trying to force something that maybe is not supposed to happen. And I've gotten better at trying to distinguish between one and the other. But when the door's opening, you just keep moving through it. And Philippe, that's exactly what you did. Is you just walked through that second door. And why do you think? Let me ask you, why do you think that law of the first deal worked for you, right? Because you're closing on Cooper Young, and all of a sudden, boom, you get a much bigger deal falling in your lap. Like, why does that happen? Why does that law of the first deal work?
I think it's after a while, when you realize, and it's, you always have to work on a backup plan, right? And I think, and I think it's exactly what you just mentioned earlier. The backup plan, because let's say you focus on one deal, and I was focusing on my first deal, the 80 units. But at the same time, what if it doesn't go through at the end for XYZ reason? And I think it's good, from that standpoint, start working on something else, just in case, and then you don't have this big gap between what you're doing, like several deals. I think it makes sense to always have something cooking. And it's like when you work on a 3-course meal, right? And you can do the different, the timing of the different dishes is going to be different. I guess, hopefully you're not going to fail on one of your dishes that you prepare, but if you have several things in work, you increase the possibility of success, and always have a backup plan. That's a lesson learned that I would gladly share.
Michael, this reminds me of the time where we won 2 deals on the same day in different areas of the country. Listen, Philippe, I do the same exact thing. I put as many sticks in as I can.
You can't control the timing sometimes, right?
You can't. But we had 2 deals that were literally running at the same time. Like I was offering on this one. One guy took 2 months to make a decision. The other guy, I thought I staggered him right. And then they ended up hitting on the same day. We won them both. We're like, oh no. But it was a good thing. At the end of the day, it was really good that the amount of, and the way we navigated out of it was interesting. But that's really this game in general. And I think this topic is really important because that gap, like you said, Philippe, it's very real. And you could just be sitting around like doing nothing for a while because you didn't take enough action in the beginning to get, enough things lined up, for sure.
Let me ask you something, Philippe. People are wondering, because you bought us an 80-unit deal. And now when you actually called the broker, when you actually, put an offer in, you had not brought that deal to us. So it's not like you and I had a conversation and we're like, oh, yes, Philippe, we'll take care of you. Don't worry, right? I mean, what gave you the confidence to make an offer on that property, not necessarily knowing how the heck you're going to close on it?
Well, I think I acted as if, in that particular case, and, obviously was not necessarily an ideal position to be in, but, basically I said, well, I'm working with this group, which was Nighthawk. And, obviously you didn't have yet told me that you were going to work with me, but, I acted like if you were going to work with me, I was like going to go through and everything was going to fall in line. So I said, I know this group, they were, I'm partnering with them. And that's how I placed the offer like that. Now the risk was that, I would have won the deal, and then, you would have told me, oh, by the way, the deal doesn't look good. So, I was taking a little bit of a leap of faith there, but, I think it worked out because, again, I followed whatever, is in the course and all the steps. And I was very confident in the quality of what I was bringing to the table. And that, the chances of, if not partnering with you, I could have easily found another partner, of the same magnitude who would be able to help me close on the deal.
I interviewed Gino Wickman a little while back. He's the author of Traction and Rocket Fuel, sold millions of books, but he had this other book called The Entrepreneurial Leap. And in it, he postulates that entrepreneurs are made, not born. Entrepreneurs are born, not made. I got that backwards. Something didn't sound right. Yeah, entrepreneurs are born, not made. In other words, you're either an entrepreneur or you're not. All right. And I'm wondering, do you consider yourself, or did you consider yourself an entrepreneur? Because you're talking about taking calculated risks, possibly multi-million-dollar risks. And I'm just wondering, did you feel that you were an entrepreneur, or I mean, how did you feel at the time?
I think, certainly, if I wasn't an entrepreneur, like I think I was putting myself in that position. It was probably unconscious. I don't think I was like, now I'm going to be like a business and I'm going to do this and this. I was more in a position, see here, there's a recipe of steps that I can take to make a successful venture, and the odds are that I'm going is going to work out. So if that's a definition of an entrepreneur. So then yes, but I don't think I was not necessarily thinking in those terms.
And this is what I love about the multifamily syndication thing. It is a business and you have to be an entrepreneur, but the bar is lower. The risk is lower. I mean, imagine opening up any other business in the world. You would need seed capital or angel investing. And then the probability of actual success is remote because like 90% of businesses fail in 5 years. Well, multifamily syndication business, like I don't know what the stats are, Garrett, but I'm sure like 99% succeed. You know,
you have so many factors moving your direction that help. I mean, you're getting the cash flow, obviously, with appreciation and combination.
You got the loan.
You got the loan, the debt. Like think about anyone if they want to go open like a cookie store or something. They got to dump $200,000 into a storefront property with a lease that's probably personally guaranteed, and like just whatever the other options. Like even if you go on like Biz Buy Sell and you look at that, you're like, that's not as attractive as multifamily, like the pet business that they started or whatever it is, you know. And there's a lot of that out there. So it's such a, with all those factors that come into play, especially the tax savings and everything.
Yeah, it's an amazing business to get into. It really is staggering. I'm
great
like,
way to transition.
Yeah,
from your job. Like you probably identified with, you know, being that W-2 employee, but you could make the transition over and be like, oh, you know what? I think differently now. I think like an entrepreneur. I was able to get into that because of this medium of business.
Yeah, one of the things that you brought, Philippe, at the time, because you always have to bring something of value to a partnership. Otherwise, why would someone want to partner you? I mean, maybe your good looks, I don't know, possibly, but you're bringing something of value, right? And at that point, it was hustle, and you handed us a deal on a silver platter. Now, we encourage you to raise money, and I think you actually ended up raising money, some of it. But that was what you brought to the table. Now, others are bringing maybe some investors to the table. They don't have a deal, but they maybe have some investors. And this is why partnerships can work so well. Now, over time, though, Philippe, you started developing the art and science of raising capital. Talk to us about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's on the more, you know, it's, I think it goes to, for me, like a pivotal moment. You kind of alluded to that earlier. A pivotal moment in my real estate career was, you know, a fairly large deal that didn't materialize. And, you know, that deal, you know, basically the equity partner bailed out, and, you know, we had a lot of money on the deal, and again, it didn't work out. And that's where, you know, I decided to kind of pivot a little bit towards, again, you know, thanks to the partnerships I built through time, I became co-sponsor on other deals. So I shifted from, you know, deal finder, you know, putting deals together, to, you know, later in the more recent years to be like co-sponsor and more focusing on, you know, assisting with due diligence and bringing some investors to the table. And, you know, again, it's thanks to my first couple of deals that I started to build my friends and family network. And then through time, I met other people, you know, events, meetups, etc. So I was able to grow my network that way. And that's how I became, you know, eventually general partner in 1,400 units.
Yeah, so it's interesting, right? Again, you're bringing something of value to, when you say co-sponsor, you are playing a role in a general partnership somehow. So maybe what's some of your advice to someone who wants to do that? And I think it's a smart thing to do because, you know, it's very rare that you are doing everything in a syndication. Typically, the syndications consist of joint ventures or partnerships. Those seems to work the best, but you have certain strengths and certain weaknesses. So what is it that you feel like you were bringing to the table, strengths, and obviously the other GPs saw value in that, but what are some of your advice around approaching other operators and becoming a successful co-sponsor?
I think there's, for any operators, you know, when they begin, they're going to need some help to raise capital. You know, it's unusual that they'll be able in a position to raise all the capital by themselves. So there's an opportunity, you know, during the first few years of like upcoming operators that, they need help. And, so you can bring to the table, again, like past experience and, help them on due diligence and help them qualify the deal. But then, if that works out, you can say, well, let me assist you, bring some, of my investors to the table to help you close on the deal. So again, like the advice is, build relationships, go through events and, meet other people and see, talk to people, always be on the lookout for people working on some deals. And, just say, well, I raised such and such, or, I did such and such due diligence activities, or put money at risk, whatever it is on a deal, and see, can I help you fill any gap you have?
So that's really interesting. And I ask more, like I've always gone into these deals with partners. I tread a little bit lately. It sounds like you've been able to identify people that maybe need what you have. How do you go about that discovery? So when you get it, let's say you meet someone at a meetup or whatever, you're like, hey, like what is that process to figure out, hey, could I partner with these people?
I think it's really like opportunistic. If you think about it, it's like, if the opportunity being, you talk to people and, when you say, well, what are you working on right now? And they tell you, well, I'm working on a 40 units in this place. And that's where you can say, well, how is it going? Do you need some help? It's as simple as that. After, obviously, I think you have to think about, is it going to be like a one-off type of partnership, or is it like a long-term partnership? And, in many cases, there are a lot of deals, if you look at the general partnership, it's a different team of people each time. So it's more like deal by deal, it's like an opportunity by opportunity that you have a group of people coming together. And it's true for, on each side, it's like some groups, they have like integrated teams and it's always like the same team. And some other people, they work with different people all the time. So, I like it. It's, I think I would say like the prerequisite, and I kind of maybe missed that, but, you have to know, obviously a little bit of the background of the different people that, I wouldn't say like just meet some random people and say, well, let's partner. It's like the link for me between the different deals. It was, maybe there was a senior partner who was the link between two different deals, two different groups. And I used that senior partner as, okay, well, I worked with that senior partner, and if he's working with these other guys, I know he has good ethics and so on. And I'm going to use that senior partner as the link, that, those guys are vetted, and then I can partner with them.
It's a good point, though, because the another advantage of multifamily syndications is that these are relatively short-term partnerships. And in the beginning, for us, we also had the makeup of the GPs were different every single time. And that was okay at the time because it made it work. We needed certain different things at different times, and that's just the way you scale. And the worst case scenario, you do a partnership with someone, but the good news is the exit is already built in. It's a sale in 5 years. In fact, it's in the business plan, right? So if you don't see eye to eye, there's a divorce already in the future, and the terms are already pre-negotiated. It's like a prenup. It's fantastic. On the other hand, then, you do start now, doing business with people, and you like people and you trust people, and then you maybe form more permanent relationships, right? And that's kind of, where we ended up in Nighthawk, but we didn't start out that way as well, because, you're on the same page and it works. But it doesn't have to be that way, certainly in the beginning. Now, you mentioned something / glossed over the fact that you got a little bit of a black eye on an equity deal that you did. What are some of the lessons learned from that? And not just exactly from what happened, like don't deal with private equity, but what are some other lessons that, talk about to the degree you're comfortable talking about what happened there, but, what are some of the lessons that you took away from that?
What happened is, it was a large deal. And, basically to make that deal work, and I'm talking, I think it was more than $30 million. To make that deal work, it was making sense to bring an equity partner. And, basically, equity partner is first you have your lender, then you have private group of people who is bringing money from different places. It could be family offices, it could be an insurance company, etc. And they come with additional terms of their own terms. So it's somewhat similar to an additional loan, but it's not really an additional loan. They're really like
a hard one to get. A very hard loan to get.
Yes,
A lot of questions.
and basically, thanks to this structure, you can improve the returns on your own syndication. And what happened to us is at the last minute, the equity partner bailed out. They were looking like really for institutional grade investors. We didn't have like a fixed team. We didn't have an office. We're working deal by deal, as you mentioned earlier. So it was kind of, they bailed out. And for the lessons that I took away is, number one, always have a backup plan. In case of somebody is bailing out on you. It's like when you start, when you're down close to the closing date, and that's when the equity partner bailed out on us. We had hard money on the deal, so without a backup solution, it didn't give us enough time to shift gears, and unfortunately, so we didn't go through. The second thing is, what happened is we were the first to try this strategy, this structure with our partners. And that was not necessarily a good situation, a comfortable situation to be in. And, because at the end of the day, the equity partner, they were looking for a more institutional grade type of GPs on the deal. And, that's why they bailed out. So, but on a positive note, this structure to use institutional investors in a deal, it's a sound business plan. Now we know several groups who did close on some deals, and as far as I know, it's working pretty well. It's a good solution to consider, but just have to make sure that you have a backup solution. And now, you wouldn't be necessarily like the first to do this, with, let's say, in our network.
So, Philippe, this resonates a lot with me, actually, I'm sure Michael as well, but we've actually done something similar. Went after the low-hanging fruit of institutional equity, because you can get one big check and then you're done. And then you get into it and you realize that, there's a lot of red tape. And a big part of that is your track record as a group, and the stuff that you've done together. And especially with new partnerships, which kind of we were at the time, it put us into a really tough spot where, with the same thing, they can pull the plug on the equity and all of a sudden you're left holding the bag and they don't have any recourse on them. And so I definitely, that, did happen before and resonate with that. So when you talk about backup, what do you mean? How do you create a backup for a situation like that where you're in kind of a bind, and I'm sure other people have gotten into tough situations like that, but what is your idea of what that is?
Well, if you're going to structure the deal where there is a institutional investor, private equity, I think the backup is to have another private equity group who is willing to work with you. And because, again, it goes back to the structure, and, you're going to work with the lender, and they will have, they're going to look at how you structure the deal on your side. So there will be several parameters. There will be also your own syndication. And so if this middle layer of the institutional investors, if you can take one and substitute it for another one, you should be fine.
Or this is a good lesson too. Or you can raise like we normally do, and have that as a backup also.
Yeah.
Let people know that
Absolutely.
That was our debrief from our thing. We did not have a backup. Also because it was probably too big for us and we probably couldn't have raised it. So this is the risk. And I've asked around with some of our peers, and this access to almost free money with private equity groups. These new relationships are very risky, right? And what apparently has worked better is if you do it on a deal where you don't need the private equity and you make it your plan A, but you can raise it if it goes south, and that gives you that plan B. Because I think that deal, Philippe, was pretty darn big, and it would have been a challenge to raise capital for that. So this is an example where we all go through some of these experiences and get a little bit of a black eye, and we kind of retrace a little bit and we keep on going. And you certainly kept on going. And you eventually decided that you wanted to mentor others, and so that's when we started a conversation around you coming on board and helping others do their first deal. So what was behind that, Philippe? Why did you feel that was a good idea and something you want to do next?
Well, it's my background is in aviation. I worked for 20 years for an aircraft manufacturing company. However, what happened last year, the COVID situation, which was at the end of, the other crisis and so on in the past, it led to some layoffs and it's, I quit my job. It wasn't my decision necessarily. I certainly loved my job, but, the company was doing bad, and I'm really glad I had the real estate lined up that I had starting slowly but surely to build through the years, and I said to everybody and my wife, and I said, I want to give it a shot, do this full time now. I can do this full time. I know I can. I have enough experience that I can shift gears and go away from the corporate job and working, being in the rat race, etc., and be more like in control of my own destiny. So that's how I decided to do this full time and share my experience. I worked basically in a pilot seat on several deals from the acquisition to asset management, and including like raising money and so on with partners, obviously. But, I'm in a position to share my experience with other people. And actually, I had started a little bit of that when I was on the deal desk for a few months a few years ago. Maybe you can probably explain that a little bit. But, I coached a student then for the acquisition of 40 units in Alabama. So that was my first experience as a coach, but I resumed doing the coaching last year.
Yeah, and you enjoy it.
Oh yes, I love it. Yeah, it's very it's very I'm happy to share what I've learned. Because again, I've really believe that's a way to go if you want to be autonomous, to have like financial freedom. I've done it, and I think I feel very confident, that I can help people, and hopefully all my students so far they're happy. I know they are. They're telling me that they are, but I help them hold their hands, to go through the steps. It's always, again, when I did it, I did my first deal. It was a particular situation, but I think in retrospect, I certainly could have used a coach like throughout, and walk me through the first deal and so on. It's very easy to make some mistakes, And, as kind of, we just mentioned, this failed deal, had I had a coach, I'm sure he would have told me, stop this deal, stop being it's too late, before it's too late, look for a backup solution. I was certainly an expensive mistake there.
Yeah.
And, have like the coach is somebody who is going to take a look with a kind of a critic eye on a deal. And, believe me, recently I spoke, I had one student, he had an LOI accepted. He was very excited. I said, that's great. Let's take a look at your deal. Because for some reason, I'm not sure why, but he didn't show me the underwriting. And then we went through the underwriting, and, he said, well, maybe I went a little bit too quickly on underwriting this deal. And, I don't think I'm going to pursue it. Yeah. I think it's when if you have somebody who can tell you that, you trust, and who can tell you like, you're going in the wrong direction. I think it's very helpful, I think.
Well, I'm glad you're on board and sharing your experience. So I'm glad you're doing that. How can people find out more about you, Philippe?
They can go on my website, which is 555ventures.com. So 3 times the number 5, ventures, VENTURES.com. Or email me directly, and you can contact me through the website. Actually, I have a comparison between single family and multifamily spreadsheet that I share on the website. And otherwise, my email address is philippe@555ventures.com, and Philippe spells PHILIPPE.
Yeah, and if you'd like to work directly with Philippe as a mentor, you can schedule a call at emichaelblanc.com/mentor, and you'll have a call with one of our strategy consultants and see if mentoring is right for you. And like Philippe said, it might be a way for you to accelerate your goals and prevent some of the bigger mistakes. So if that is for you, check us out, emichaelblanc.com/mentor. And Philippe, I want to thank you for being on the show today.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, guys.